Hi, and welcome back. My name is Paige Elizabeth, and I'm here with Katie Werpinski, and we are talking all things life, creating consciousness, having discussions that are uncomfortable that other people don't necessarily want to have, right? And this week we are talking about because a lot of the content is really geared towards women in kind of that midlife, so 35 to 45 bracket. Just the changes, the physiological changes, the mental changes, the spiritual changes, the astrological changes that like happen during this time that like nobody in my family warned me about. So we talk about it. And this week our discussion is basically going to be about the fact that a lot of people start over. Like that's more common than we want to give it credit. And you can feel lost in that process, but like how normal that is, because we set on a path when we're younger of like, if I can just get there, then I'll be fine. And I know we've all had that thought, if I can just get there, then I'll be fine. But where the fuck is there?
Excellent question because
Where is there?
really,
Like, where is that place? You know what I mean? And how every one of my peers that I've had this discussion with, whether they got married or didn't get married, had kids or didn't have kids, had an amazing career or no career, it didn't matter because every single one of us found ourselves in this place where we're like, okay, well, that wasn't what I thought, or that didn't work, or that's gone, or something to the effect of like now having to scratch your head and go, okay, now what, right? And Katie is definitely no exception to this. Katie, I do a lot of the talking on these podcasts, but I'm going to really open up the floor to her today because Katie has been also going through this transition. Um, Astrologically speaking, Saturn is about to move off her Mercury finally, and her Neptune square will be complete, as will mine. But I wanted to give her the platform to just talk about the transitions that she's been through and how uncomfortable this process has been for her. So,
it has been a difficult process, that's for sure. And I think in some of our previous recordings, we've talked about it, just that journey. And it has just, and every week when we have these talks, I think, oh, it's going to be, oh, next week it'll be a little more of a breakthrough, and we can talk about that breakthrough. But there's not a breakthrough, and you just kind of it feels like you're maintaining, like you're just treading water, and that's the status quo. And we had the conversation about, kind of accepting that, like, okay, this is my situation, and that's okay. And it's okay to be in this situation and because I have to remember that I made this decision to, to move across the country, to sort of start a new career, to start over, and to just trust that process. And it has been really difficult to just relinquish control to the universe and just say, okay, I made the hard decision and I will put in the hard work, but like, I got to just trust that, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's hard because each day you think, okay, today's going to be a little bit better. I'm going to get that little thing that's going to take me a little bit further to get me to where I'm supposed to be. But where is it I'm supposed to be? And um, Paige obviously has provided amazing advice on how to just sort of let go and accept and surrender, because surrendering is so difficult when you feel like, but if I'm not worrying about it, how am I going to get anything done? When really it's the worrying that's probably holding me back, I would think. But it's difficult. And again, just surrendering, I think, was the best advice you've given me, because I'm fighting against something that clearly it's not ready to happen yet. And I have to just remember it will happen when it's ready to happen. But it's difficult and it's scary. And for myself, even, I mean, it's been what, over 2 months since I've been here, and I haven't even unpacked everything. And it felt like it was literally emotionally unpacking, where I finally just had to like open that garage and look at those boxes and just open the box and clear it out. And it's like also metaphorical for my mind of just clear it out, let it go, and just proceed. But obviously, it's much easier said than done. So if there's a manual out there, I would love to have it, but I don't think there is.
Well, and that's the thing that I come across a lot when I'm helping people reframe, because people have a tendency to say, what is the right answer instead of what works for me? And I think this is why a lot of society is looking to lean on something, whether that's a religious practice or a spiritual practice or education, or like they're looking for somewhere to lean and to be told what
Mhm.
is right, because that's easier than having to ask the questions, well, what works for me, what's right for me? And like I had asked you the other day, because I know I've had this thought myself of failure. It's like, well, I feel like I have failed, but according to who and what metric?
Mhm. That really struck
if,
a chord for me.
if I'm comparing myself to the druggie on the street, oh my gosh, I've won the lottery. Like, according to what metric are we speaking
Yeah,
about failure? I mean,
absolutely.
I have to remind myself that, like, there is life beyond this life, and that what I take with me are my experiences as opposed to the material. And so it's more about how did I process what I went through, because that's what I'm going to get stuck with when I die, essentially. And that's where I guess that's where I find my measuring stick. You know what I mean? Like, on
Mhm.
a soul level, am I doing my best? If that's the question, then the answer is absolutely yes. On a material level, am I doing my best? Probably not. But my priorities weren't to have a Ferrari and a $10 million house either. That just wasn't my priority. If that
Yeah.
was, I would be cutting corners all over the place and st is jumping all over people just to get to the
Mhm.
top. But that wasn't my priority. My priority was to really have a sense of self-mastery. And so if I look at it from that perspective, then I'm like, well, I'm definitely winning. But you have to reconcile it with this human experience, which can be hard because our ego goes, well, she's prettier or richer. You know what I mean? And then you think you're failing.
It's because there's always going to be somebody who has something that you don't have that you long for. And it's like, how do I just be happy and comfortable in my own skin? And when you say self-mastery, like what is self-mastery? Like when I ask myself that, I don't even know how to answer that for myself, let alone be able to like, am I doing it? Am I doing the right thing? Am I fulfilling and doing the best I can do? And then I end up thinking more about that thought than actually just doing and moving forward. It's hard when you get stuck in that loop, questioning. So
Right. And so I'm curious, Katie, what led up to this move?
I think it was, if I had to put like my finger on it, I think after my divorce, it just obviously that's a life-changing experience in and of itself. And when you have more time for yourself and you're not like dedicating that to a partner and you have to really think about what do I want? I just started to realize that like I wasn't feeling fulfilled in myself, let alone my marriage. It was like maybe I was using that to kind of block almost what I was feeling inside. I was just more concerned, like, oh, I'll take care of my partner, then I don't have to take care of myself. And so when I had to ask myself, what did I want? It was like, well, I know I don't want this anymore. I don't know what that is, the next thing, but I know that I don't want this. And then, you start to add the logistics of like price of rent, cost of living in New York City. And you have to say, like, I love New York. I love New York City. I mean, not crazy about the politics, but it was my home for 15 years. And I just thought, I know I can't, it's not feasible anymore. Like, I need to be fiscally responsible. And part of that means saving some money, moving home, which a lot of people have done. And it's hard to admit and tell people that, but it's like, it is what it is. Because I'm actually planning for my future. So instead of draining my savings on what, at least I can now save and move towards something new. And so it just basically, it was just acknowledging I need more. And if I'm not getting that here, then I need to do something different.
And there's no shame in moving home. I've said this, if I had got along with my mother, I'd move home. Like, why not? Who cares?
And also, yeah, it's like,
Who
who am I
cares?
trying to impress? I'm 42. If you don't like me, you don't like me. And if
I
you don't like
know,
me,
right?
and if
Like,
you look down on me because I moved home, then I don't want you in my life anyways.
yeah, I mean, if it was just my dad, oh, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, I'd be like, Dad, I got you. I'll cook dinner for you, not a problem. You
I
know?
can, I can handle all things technology in this house. I can do all the stuff. Like I earn my keep.
And I even told my dad, I said, if mom goes before you, I got you. Like I will totally step in and take care of you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, obviously if it's flipped, then she's gonna have to rely on one of my sisters. I will not be around, but like but but yeah, there's that's what it means to start over. Like you're going back to ground zero and it's like it's hard. When I think about even just with my business, right? Like, I mean, I was at the peak of my career before COVID, and then obviously there was the assault, there was COVID, there was just kind of the shifting of the community that I belong to and all this stuff. And like it's a permanent change that I can't go back. Like I can't do things that same way. And even
Mhm.
like my coach who I consult with about all of the stuff I'm doing with scaling and stuff, I told him point blank, because like the way that I built my brand before is not even an option right now. It is just I post something, 10 years ago on mindfulness, boom, like everyone's interested. I do that now, nobody cares. Like there's a completely different audience too. Like
Yeah.
a completely different audience. Like it's all if I post political stuff, everyone gets excited. But if I post my mindset stuff, nobody's interested. So like I can't tap into that organic
Yeah.
like I did. So I have to take a new approach and starting over and learning a completely different way of doing things. I've had to surrender to this process and go, okay, I guess the results are going to take longer than I thought, and that's fine.
But it's difficult. It's surrendering. It's been really, really difficult. And I'm still not there 100%, but it's like just like that feeling of when you don't even realize your body is so tensed up until something happens and like you untense a little bit and it's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize how tense I was until I was, I had relaxed. And I'm sort of in that state mentally right now of like, I just need to relax my brain and my body and just be open. And for some reason, I just feel like I'm safer being tensed up, but still waiting for that one day where it just suddenly feels like you just relax and can breathe again. But it'll come.
No, absolutely. And I mean, like, it'll come because you either like let go and allow it or because life had to force you into it. Like, but it's gonna come.
But it is really, I realize like a conscious effort that I have to make too, though, of like, okay, we have to let things happen. We can't control everything. Just set your goals for the day, meet those goals, and Rome's not built in a day. Wasn't built in a day. You just have to do the little bit so that it adds up instead of getting overwhelmed thinking you have to do everything today, because that's just not realistic. But yet we put that pressure on ourselves to make it feel like we're doing the work. See, look, I'm doing the work, but it's not quality work because you're just forcing it. And it's have to learn to just day by day and relax.
And for me, one of the things that has always been helpful is recognizing that life is, and I say this to my clients all the time, life is not a hierarchy of events where we're like, oh, I'm just getting better and better. I'm getting there. It's a wheel.
And you're going to
You know
be
what
at
I
the
mean?
top sometimes and the bottom sometimes.
The
And
planet cycle, the earth spins. We have night and day. Like things are cyclical and seasonal. And if you can recognize that part, then you can recognize that we don't live in this static absolute where it's like, oh, I fell off. No, the wheel's just turning.
Mhm.
Fall from grace. The wheel's just turning. Sometimes we're at the top of the wheel where the view is amazing and we see it all and we have it all. And other times we're on the bottom end where it's dark and we're just eating rocks. You know what I mean? But that's normal. And there's small cycles and then there's large cycles, right? Like there's full on eras that we go through as opposed to like mini cycles. And
Mhm.
when I think about an era, a Pluto transition, which is roughly 2 years, is nothing compared to like an era which is like 7 to 10 years, right? Me kind of being stuck in apathy after everything just kind of one after the other fell apart for me. And it took a kind of a come to Jesus for me to recognize like your problem is that you're stuck in this apathetic place. And until you move beyond that defense mechanism, nothing is going to feel connected. Nothing is going to feel organic. It's all going to feel forced. And that became borderline era for me. 5 years is a long time to be stuck there.
And
So,
it's when you don't even realize how long, like, oh my gosh, I've been like this. This has been happening. And how do you break it? And it's hard when you acknowledge it and then you want to break it, but then you don't know how to. And then you feel abnormal. Like, does anybody else feel this way?
but that also just goes to show because so often we have this mindset that like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, or life is just going to change on its own. And it's like, I was here 5 years and nothing was changing on its own. And
Mhm.
until I was willing to just take control of that part and be like, no, like I am the problem. I'm the problem. The sun is
It's
shining. I have all the resources in the world. I have all the support in the world.
mhm.
I'm the problem.
That's how I'm feeling right now. And that's why it's like there is no reason for it to not be working and happening. Why isn't it?
And this is that fine balance, right? It's like, okay, well, is it just a shitty season or is it me? That can be daunting, right? But it's like, if all you can do in those times where you're not sure is keep showing up. Like, there's the question in entrepreneurship of like, how is it phrased? Do I like push harder or do I pivot? Right?
Mm.
And and like in yoga, it's like, do I use more force or do I finally just yield to surrender? And that can be difficult sometimes to figure out, I think.
When that happens, what is your instinct?
I mean, I am grateful for a 22-year yoga practice to teach me that nuance, right? It's a little bit different to apply it to, say, business, because of so many external factors, the economy, the inflation, the politics, people's spending habits. There's just demand, like there's a lot of things that can play into that. Um, I know with my yoga practice, it was like you would just kind of play with it, right? Well, if I
Yeah.
just let go here, what happens? If I push here, what happens? And you can test it and get better feedback quicker.
Hmm.
It can be hard. I know that like I'm a huge fan of Alex Hormozy, and he was like, most often you're just going to push harder. You're not going to pivot, but that's a business thing when it comes to
Yeah.
like our internal transformations. I guess a good way to measure that is, are you sick of where you've been based on the pushing?
Mm.
You know what
Okay.
I mean? It's like if I am trying to push through apathy and it's not going anywhere, then maybe I need to take a different approach to it.
And then it's that question of like, when is when though? Like, because you feel like, okay, one more day. I'll give it one more week. I'll give it one more, quarter, whatever it is. And then it's like, I guess that's the big question is when?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for myself, it's just I can feel it internally, the frustration, just being so fed up. You know, for me also, you have to understand, I have, because of my yoga practice, really learned to surrender and let go and allow and give things sometimes too much time. Because I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Let me just be in the flow. And then 6 months later, I'm like, okay, am I being in the flow? Am I just being lazy? You know what I mean? Like again, it can be there's that fine line, right? Of
Mhm.
am I doing the most for this? If I'm doing the most for this, then I know that the next step is surrender. If I'm not doing the most for this, then I know I need to kind of keep pushing a little harder,
Yeah.
you know? But like starting over is definitely so uncomfortable. Although I will say one benefit of starting over is if you've already lost everything, there's no risk.
None. And I kind of felt like I had nothing. So it was like, okay, why not just then, if what you're doing for years isn't working, I think it has to be a major pivot. And that was really the first time in my life that I did a pivot, like pivot. And it's getting easier each day. Like time, I do believe, time heals all wounds. And even if it wasn't a huge wound, or it was like a self-inflicted wound, it's still like just giving it time. And I don't regret it though. And that's why I feel like even though it's hard and uncomfortable and it's all the things, um, there's no regret. And so that's why I'm like, I think that's my surrender in that sense of like, okay, but I'm not regretting this, so I have to trust it and just keep moving forward. Because the sun is going to shine, the world is turning, and I don't want to be left behind. And even if I don't have it together, I just like I want to continue. I want to continue until that for me is my pushing forward is just nope, this was our decision and we're going to stick to it and give it the time and just keep pushing forward because I don't think I have a big pivot in me for a while.
I remember the first time I moved to Los Angeles, and I had made the decision when I was 19. And it was just like I knew I needed to have better guidance with my yoga practice, and there was nobody here in Vegas, to teach me Ashtanga yoga. And I really wanted to dive into this. And so I'd take these weekend trips out there. I had a friend who lived in LA. He moved back to Vegas, but at the time I was seeing him, and I'd go out and stay with him. And so I got to see Tim Miller in Encinitas, and then I saw Chuck Miller in Los Angeles. And it was based on their schedule of availability and like my schedule, like that was kind of how I was able to go to their rooms. But I had to really meditate on like who was I going to commit to as a teacher because Chuck taught mornings and his, partner Mati taught afternoons. I never met Mati. And yet when I meditated on who should be my teacher, when I made the decision to move to LA, because I was like, Encinitas didn't feel right for me. It felt
Mhm.
like Santa Monica. And I was like, who am I going to study with? And it was just really funny because instinctively I knew I needed to study with Mati and I'd never met the woman. I'd never met her. So like there was like a little glimmer of light inside me that was like, yes, she's the one that you need to work with. And I made this commitment. I rented a room. I got all of this stuff in position and moved out there and still hadn't met her.
That's
And
faith.
I remember when I introduced myself to her, I said I moved out here because I knew I needed to work with you. And it was just like she was the perfect teacher for me at that time. I was a rebellious young person, and she just wasn't going to take any of my shit. And it was just she really kind of like contained me a little bit. I was really good about kind of running over people, and I've had to pull that back in, as an adult, but like she just wouldn't take my shit. And I was like, okay, yeah, now I can see why she was supposed to be my teacher. Because in yoga, traditionally you kind of submit to a teacher, and I'm not good at submitting, but I did submit to her. And but it was so much faith.
Exactly. It was
So much
yeah,
faith.
faith, but also faith in yourself too, of like, I made the right decision. Like it just trusting yourself and your instinct. It's so underrated and it just feels like it's so lost in so much noise in the world that like, how do you get back to trusting yourself when it feels like so many things make you doubt yourself? It's learning to trust yourself again.
But it's like going back to the yoga practice. It's like I got first, second, third, and fourth series under my belt because I mastered the concept of trial and error. Too many people are afraid to make the wrong move, so they make no move, or they stick
Yeah.
in their comfort zone and they never actually get anywhere. But in order to learn, we have to be able to test a theory. We have to be able to test an idea or test a system, right? And
Mhm.
so I've kind of lived with this thinking where it's like, well, I won't know if it works until I try it.
Yeah.
And, some of the most difficult moves, like nobody taught me. I taught myself because I was willing to test the angle. Like, is it this muscle that's needed? Is it this muscle that's weak? One thing I learned from Mati, and then Maya became another woman that I kind of submit 2 years later. Mati taught me to find the weakness and lean in. Maya taught me to find the stuckness and lean in. And
Mm.
and so I've adopted those mindsets as I've progressed in my life, where it's like we don't want to run from the weakness. We want to find the weakness and lean into it on purpose.
Yeah.
And weakness in our daily life could be just, do I confront that person? Do I take that job? Do I make that move? Like that's the weakness, right? The thing that we fear that makes us feel vulnerable. That's the weak point. And we don't lean into it so we can be annihilated. We lean into it so we can explore it and make it strong and find
Mhm.
out if it's relevant or not.
And it's like the saying, like a group is only as strong as the weakest link. And that's sort of how it is, you know, with an individual. It's like you do have to find your weak point and don't be afraid of it because I mean, you have to strengthen. It's like with working out. You know, they say usually it's the exercise you hate doing the most that you should be doing.
No, absolutely. And that's where if you can just, again, it's not about being wrong. It's not about being stupid because that's a big one I come across. A lot of people of a dominant Aquarius in their chart have this fear of being stupid. Like if you're a sun, moon, or ascendant in Aquarius, I can almost guarantee one of the biggest fears is being seen as stupid because they're know-it-alls. So they hate being seen as not knowing it all. But it's not about knowing it all. It's about discovering where the weak link is so you can
Mhm.
strengthen it.
Absolutely. And that's it reminds me of when we took that test the other week of, you know,
The life
personality.
trap test.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm a self-sabotager. But now that you know, see it written on the computer screen, it's like, how do you change that? And it's like, that is obviously a weakness, but like, I don't know how to make it better. How do you tweak it? How do you start to like trust yourself and And it starts with like what you said, there's a fear of doing something wrong. So then you just don't do anything. And then it's like, then where are you? And that's sort of like where I kind of felt like I was at the last few years was I don't want to be this self-sabotager. But like I have to then put myself in a position where it's like I have to move forward. But like I had to like booby trap myself to do it. And yet I feel like I'm still there of like, ooh, I'll take it like dipping your toe in the pool, but then like retracting it immediately. And it's like at one point you're just gonna have to jump in. There is no more testing the water. It's just jumping in.
No, absolutely. I mean, my move to Florida, it was like, I don't know if this is going to be right or wrong. And I remember my sister, because she lives in Florida, and she's like, if you hate it, you just go back home. And what's funny is I came back home and it's like, it's not the same. I came back home to be close to my dad, and literally 2 months after I moved home, he's like, I sold the house and we're moving to Utah. And I'm like, what, Dad? I'm home for
It's
you. You're an old man. I wanted to be close to you.
everybody said that to me too, though, of like, oh, if it doesn't work, you just come back in a year. And it's, and I always just thought when my lease renewal came up, I think that that was truly the deciding factor. Like the moment was like, I don't want to sign this lease and then in a year still be feeling the same of like, and that was the risk, right? Of like, I could, something could have happened and I could be the happiest person on the planet in a year. But like
Mhm.
the likelihood of that happening, given the current circumstances, it was like, why prolong the anxiety and the stress for one more year? Just do it now. And then in a year from now, if you still feel that way, at least you did the thing that was the option and you can go back. And then like, what did I really lose? But it that was the moment that it was just like, nope, this is your chance. And if you're going to be brave, you're going to do the hard thing because it's easier to stay. It's easier to just sign the lease, keep going about your day, staying in the same habits. Like it was the hard decision to be like, you know what, this I can't do this anymore. And so here we are.
But again, and that's where, as a coach, I constantly have to help people reframe. It's not about right or wrong. It's about,
Mhm,
does it work? Is it working for you? If it's not
mhm,
working for you, it's not right for you. Who cares what your parents think? Who cares what your spouse thinks? Who cares what your friends think? It
mhm,
doesn't work for you, right? Like that's where you have to take ownership of your decisions and be like, stop leaning
mhm,
on these frameworks to make the decision for you because you don't have the courage to do it for yourself.
mhm. And everybody said, why are you moving? Why are you moving? And it's like, I didn't realize I had to have a reason. Do you know what I mean? Or for things to be going wrong, or, like it just was like, it's just a decision I made because I didn't feel like I was in the right place, doing the right thing. I just was like, nothing was, things don't have to be wrong for you to make a decision. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
It's like when people talk about relationships, like, people stay in a relationship because they say, because there's nothing wrong with them. Well, that's fine. Nothing has to be wrong with somebody for them to like not be the right person for you. You know what I mean? So it's so interesting how it's applied to every aspect of life.
Oh
And
my
it's like,
gosh, it's such a terrible mindset trap.
mhm. Like
It
people
really
think you have to be cheated on or, XYZ to happen to leave a relationship. It's like nothing has to be wrong with the other person. It's just not the right thing for you right now.
Yeah, I gave up a 22-year yoga practice, not because anything was wrong.
It just
It ran its
wasn't
course.
right.
It ran its course. Its purpose had been fulfilled.
Mhm.
Will I go back to it at some point? Time will tell. I have no idea, but for that particular point in my life, it had run its course, and the more I tried to just kind of show up, the more it just didn't feel right. Like
Yeah.
that connection had died. And
And
so
it
it just
felt.
wasn't working for me anymore. And
Mhm.
everyone was like, "Oh, she got burnt out." I didn't get burnt out. I didn't get injured. We didn't have a fight. There was no problem. It just ran its course.
See,
And
everybody thinks
people
there
were
has to be a
so
negative.
upset.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my gosh.
there has
People
to
in
be
the
a
community were so
reason.
mad at me for quitting. I'm like, you don't get it. Like, it's not, it doesn't serve my purpose anymore.
Mhm. And then I think it really set off people's minds of thinking, I could see that people thought like, oh, maybe I can do something like that then. Maybe I don't need to stay. Like, why are we all staying in New York? Like, what for? And at my going away gathering, I was sitting at a table with friends that I'd known, since the day I moved to New York. And it's like nobody wanted to admit it, but people started saying slowly throughout the night, like, I think it's great you're moving. If I could move right now, I would. And it's like, so it brought almost to the surface a conversation for people to have with themselves of like, are we all staying just because the other person's staying? And what's going to happen when people like my friends, I had a lot of friends married or have kids, and eventually they're going to move out of the city. So why would I stay for I love my friends, but like, if I'm not happy, I can't stay just to make other people happy.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, but that's what happens. It's like, and again, I moved to Florida. And just as I was really developing a relationship to home, that's when I picked up and left. I'm going to come home and like Vegas is so different now. I mean, you were raised here. It's like the small
Hmm.
town feel of like our, especially you, because you went to Gorman. So that small town feel of all of these people who ran Vegas, like their parents, the kids you grew up with, their parents
Yeah.
ran this town. And it's like it's not a small town feel anymore. It's a city, right? We
Hmm.
have the Aces, we have the Raiders, we have the Golden Knights, it's like it's very corporate. It's lost
Hmm.
its flavor. And now that my parents are gone, I'm like, well, my mother, who was born in Las Vegas, like now she's even gone.
Uh-huh.
So it's different. And it's not bad. Again, it's not like, oh, I can't do this. It doesn't work.
Totally.
It's not
Hmm.
so strong that it doesn't work. But does it work the way I need it or want it to work?
Absolutely.
I
Hmm.
don't know the answer to that yet. I mean, if I wanted to stay in my comfort zone just because I know the streets like the back of my hand and I never have to think about where I'm going when I get on the road, I just
Hmm.
unconsciously end up there, because I've been here my whole life, right? Like I could do that.
And it's the comfort thing. And like that's what I realized is like I was just staying because I was comfortable, like with my surroundings, like inside and out. I know everything about that city. So it was like it was the comfort level. And I don't think a lot of people identify with New York City being comfortable.
And
But
it's
like when
familiar if you've been there.
it's your reality and it's just like I don't even pay people are like, how do you live there? It's so chaotic and so many people. I'm like, I don't know otherwise. Like it felt weird to move here and not see people and skyscrapers and it's like it's your frame of mind. And it's like I just didn't want to be because pretty soon comfortable becomes stuck. And I was feeling just stuck, period. And what do you do when you're stuck? It's like you have to do something different. There is no pushing, like when you're stuck in the mud, you're not going to push deeper into the mud. You're going to try to get yourself out of the mud. So that's just sort of like how my brain was thinking at the time.
Well, and I also think that because we're not 22, right? There's this like, what is everyone going to think if I have to do this, if I have to start over?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, again, like, okay, so maybe in your career you don't have to start over. Like, I know plenty of people, but then they end up getting divorced,
Mhm.
right? And like their security system is ripped away from them. Or maybe like you just like me, I'm an entrepreneur and I get to start over again in business. But like my security system has never really been an issue because it's mine. I didn't ever have what I like I never developed a family, right? So
Yeah.
I am my security system, right? So like
Mhm.
that's not going to be taken from me because that's me. But like on a business level, it's like, oh God, here we go again. Okay, we can do this. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I don't know anyone who hits 40 and isn't like, oh, great, I get to do this all over again, or oh, I get to end this, or oh, I have to, I don't know,
Mhm. And
even,
I said, I was scared. Like, I thought, oh my gosh, the optics of my situation, 42 with two cats, moving home. It was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm an Instagram meme or something. Like, it just, and then once I got over that though, I never thought about it again. I was like, I actually don't care because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who wish they could just up and move and like start over. So I have to look at it from the positive versus, oh my God, I'm 42 and I have to start over. And instead of it saying, half of my life is over, it's like, no, I have another half of my life to live. And I want to do better. So it's like it's just half full, half empty. It's just how you view it.
well, what if you had kids? Imagine starting over with kids or
Oh,
something.
I couldn't. I could barely do it with two cats. Like I don't know how. So like, I mean, props to people who have to start over with children because I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. I can't. I just have to worry about myself. And then you put children into the mix, that would just be horrible. That's all I could say because the stress of moving and especially to a brand new city, it's like it's hard. Like I don't have a locked in group of friends here. I don't have my usual coffee spot. I don't have, or the corner bar where you can just pop in and you recognize the people there. It's like everything feels so foreign. So to do that with children, I really admire people who can do that.
Right. I mean, but that's the thing. Like, my friends who aren't necessarily starting over, they still feel lost. Like I called a girlfriend of mine the other day. I texted her and I just said, how are you? 6 hours later, she texted me back. She goes, I didn't even know how to answer your question because it's not about me. Like my life is never about me. So I didn't even really know how to respond to that. But when I asked her, do you feel lost? Do you feel spacey, ungrounded? Do you feel like you're just not really sure about yourself and your life? She goes, oh yeah, I feel that all the time. And yet she's been married since she was 20 and she's got 4 kids and like on the outside everything is great and her marriage is good and but yet internally she's still just like, and she
What
has said
else?
this to me, she's like, yeah, like when you're young you project this idea of what you want to create, and she goes, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not what I thought it would be at all. She's like, I got everything I wanted and it's not at all what I thought it would be.
Because that's what the 20-year-old wanted. But now you're 40. And what does the 40-year-old want and need? And you have
Huh.
to change and adapt. And it's like, but in that situation, it's permanent, you know.
And of course she wouldn't change it, she loves her family, but it's still just like,
Absolutely.
oh, I got sold something different. So again, it's not like you can't get everything and not have this massive start over, but you can still feel lost and you can still feel like, well, I was totally time shared into this situation. Like I thought it would be something different, you know?
But it's important for, like what we're doing is for people to just not feel alone
Hmm.
and to not feel like they're the abnormal one, where I think it's normal. And I think it's a lot more common than people want to let on, that it's just maybe things just aren't okay and not what you want and not what you thought it would be. And you need to start over or you want to start over. And that it's, I think, healthy almost that you're going through changes and wanting to, pivot or push harder, but like to acknowledge that like change is a part of the process is key because you see people who just, yeah, on autopilot getting through each day, but it's like one day they're going to have to face the music.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I guess that's where it's like, stop trying to protect an image, because I feel like that's where a lot of us get caught, is we just want to protect this image, and why, I don't know. So I was talking to another friend of mine in Florida, and she's 10 years older than me. And she's friends with another woman that I've known literally my whole life, who's also 10 years older than me. But I had a little bit of a falling out with because, like, she was kind of projecting onto me. So, for example, um, instead of just saying to me, "Hey, my husband just doesn't want to have company over," she'd be like, "Well, I think you're a little demanding." But she told our other friend that it actually is about the husband. And I'm like, demanding. She accused me of not making enough time for her. So when I finally was like, okay, I'll come by and hang out with you, because they were like family to me. I'd stayed with them many times when I went to Florida. And so I was like, well, I don't want to be disrespectful. I could totally make time for them. So as I was making more time, then she was pushing back. And it was like, well, make up your mind. Well, like, I don't care. But, it's been a year since I kind of confronted her on it. And our mutual friend who is getting a divorce, basically said, she's like, yeah, she's like, she kind of came out and made it clear that things are not very good with her spouse. And the reason she works so hard all the time just to stay out of the home, just to avoid being home. And I said, things would be so much easier for her if she would just give up the control and give up this like image.
Image,
But
yeah.
she's trying so hard to maintain this image of her life and her marriage, instead of just saying, God, it's like this is what I'm going through and it sucks, and you know what I mean? And but eventually it catches up and you can't maintain that control anymore.
People are so afraid to be vulnerable. It's crazy. And for me, I'm like, I'm an open book. I can, like, I have no qualms in being completely honest about everything I'm going through. And it's so sad when you see somebody that just, if they would just open up and talk about you don't just, let it pour out of you, but just to say, like, hey, you know what, I am having a hard time. Like when people say, oh, how are you today? It's okay to say, today's kind of a rough day, but I'll be fine. People have to be, I'm great, I'm good, wonderful. It's like, you know, I wish people could be a little bit more vulnerable because that's where trust is built, and trust is so important anymore.
No, absolutely. And it's like the thing that I always tell people is like, if you're really looking for connection and intimacy, it comes from that uncomfortable space.
Hmm.
It
Which
doesn't come from manipulation, from trying to control. And control can be controlling others. It could be trying to control the narrative, trying to control yourself, trying to control an image, whatever. But like it doesn't come from control. Connection always comes from actually like forfeiting that part, being seen and allowing that person to be present for you. And it's like if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to have connection.
Mhm. It's so true. It's like when people go through something traumatic together, and it brings people so close because they were forced to be vulnerable. You know what I mean? That usually put in a position where it's like you had to be vulnerable, but relationships grow so much more and are so much stronger. So that's the irony, right? Of like being vulnerable makes you feel weak, but really it makes relationships stronger.
Right. And you can't connect to others unless you connect to yourself. And people are afraid to be vulnerable with someone else. And I always tell them you're not actually doing it for the purpose of their response. You're stepping into that vulnerability and voicing what's going on with you so that way you can show up for yourself.
Mhm.
First and foremost, because if you deny what's going on, then you deny yourself and you create more disconnection internally. So you have to be willing to show up for yourself first and foremost. And if you can do that, then you can bridge that gap with other people. But it's never about their response. So even if they don't give you the response you want, that's irrelevant. You just got closer to yourself.
Totally agree.
So it's an important process to practice. And this kitten is behind. Can you see her? There she is. She wants to join the call. But it's an important it's an important process. And when people are so afraid of being authentic, it's like they're afraid that people will weaponize things against them.
Yeah,
But if you take ownership of yourself, your choices, everything about you, if you own it, no one can weaponize it.
exactly. It's like you can call me XYZ, and it's like I'd probably agree with you and be like, yeah, I
I
am
know
most.
I have a joke, and people call, are like, "You're such a bitch." I'm like, "No, I'm much worse, actually."
But
Like
it's true.
I'm not, or like you're a cat lady, and I'm like, It's so true. Like I love
Yes. I
bees.
wish I had one more. Like,
I
yes.
know, right? Like if I could rescue them all, I would. Like, and I will definitely, I said this on a TikTok. I was like, I will wipe the ass of a geriatric cat who has cancer any day over taking care of a man, like any day.
I second that.
Like if I have to
Do
take care of a
anything.
grown man, my attraction for him is gone. Gone. I am not your mother. But anyway, so but yeah, I think it's just important to recognize that like this is like the elephant in the room when you're at a certain point in your life. I mean, I started over at 32, like my brother died. I had to kind of reset a little bit then as well. But like whether you're starting out or starting over, if you feel lost, that's so normal. And trial and error is the only way you're going to know if it works for you. Not if it's right, but if it works. Let's stop thinking about right and wrong and start thinking in terms of whether or not it's working.
Mhm. And what do you have to lose? You told me this. It's like what it's like if you're already at that point, it's like what do you have to lose but to learn, you know?
You
Either
know,
be
people who are
successful or
like,
you
they got
learn.
nothing going for them, and they're like, I don't know if I can do that. What else do you have going on? You know?
Yep.
It's like I had a business partner when I had my magazine, and he was like, I need to get paid for my sweat. And I go, I'd be much more inclined to pay you for your sweat if you were actually sacrificing other jobs to do this one. But no one's knocking on your door. So while I'm willing to pay your rent so you can show up, you're not actually turning down other jobs to be here. So let's stop acting like you're risking so much.
Yeah, right. You're putting it all on the line.
Okay. Like this is your vehicle right now. You're not switching cars. This is your vehicle right now.
Yep.
But yeah, like what are you risking? And it's like I say that rhetorically because I totally understand the fact that like our egos lie to us all day long. And you have to understand that like the brain is always lying to protect itself. And if you can kind of recognize that, then it's easier to take risk because you know that the brain and the body is essentially just trying to protect the status quo. That's it. It's just trying to protect where it's at. It doesn't want to shift. Your body and your brain doesn't want to exhibit any more energy than you do.
Hmm.
And it's just trying to get you to not shift.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, oh, I can't.
it. She's so funny.
How do you not love cats? I'm sorry. I just need to find a cat daddy now. Like, I want to find a guy who loves cats too.
Right? Yeah. Or at least doesn't hate him.
Yeah, you know what? It's fine. They don't have to like be an enthusiast, but just be like, cool, they're okay to have around.
Mhm. I had one ex when I was with Charlie and Portia. And Portia ended up when I moved to Los Angeles, she was allergic to fleas. And like we don't have fleas in Nevada. And so he's like, I'll just take her home with me. I'll just bring her back to Vegas and she can live with
Oh,
me. And I swear to God, it was like being cheated on, those two.
it is true.
I had to compete for his attention. And I remember one time, like they were snuggling, and I was like, "You're gonna have to move, Portia." And she got off the couch. She had a dog. She looked around and she wouldn't slap the dog. She had to take it out on somebody. Like the dog didn't do anything, but she was so mad. You know what I mean? But like,
But such a
yeah,
cat
those
move.
two got real close, and like he would come to LA. Like every Friday through Sunday, he'd be in Los Angeles with me, and he'd come home, and then we would like, I don't think we Zoomed. I think we Skyped at that time. This is 2012. But anyway, and he would, FaceTime me and he'd be like showing me. He's like, see, I'm with my girl. She missed me so much.
I love it. I
It's
need that.
like, whatever. I got Charlie. It's fine. You know? But yeah, I mean, they grew. And then when I moved back to Vegas and I picked her up to bring her back to my house because I was renting out my house while I left. Oh, she was pissed. She's like, I don't think you're. She wanted to go back to his place. So anyway, finally she
Girl.
adapted. She adapted. She had her own personality. She definitely was a little explorer when we lived in Costa Rica, but now she has climbed over the rainbow and she's living another dimension.
Hmm.
But
Use
anyway,
that skill.
but yeah, I mean, again, just it's totally normal to have to start over or to feel lost. And um, any last minute thoughts, words?
It's just that you're going to have good days and bad days when you start over. So it's like just because one day you think, oh, I got it, and this was the right thing, and you can feel different the next day, and that's okay. Like not every day has to be the like, I made the right decision. And
Right.
like you said, it's consistency and showing up. It's like, nope, today might not be great, but we're here, we're going to do it, and we're going to work towards something more. So just stay with it. Trust yourself.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Katie, for joining me as usual, and thank you to those who participated in watching. And